A new PvP series means new rewards, and with it an increased interest in the game mode, and with that being the case, there's going to be an increase in new players who don't know what to play, let alone how to play it. And so here's a quick summary of every job that will hopefully help ease the process of learning PvP. Astro is a supportive focused healer who uses abilities like their draw to buff their team or aspect of benefit to provide heals. They also have strong AoE damage and Gravity 2 and Microcosm, both of which come with their own utility, one being an AoE CC and the other providing extra healing for their party. They also have the ability to instantly recast a handful of their abilities with double cast that will also slightly change their effects. Astro's limit break is Celestial River, which greatly increases the damage of nearby allies while also reducing it for enemies. This effect starts out strong but will gradually grow weaker. The pros to Astro are their great party support, their AoE CC, and an incredibly annoying LB to fight against. Cons, they're rather reliant on their team and they lack mobility. Sage is a damage-focused healer who provides healing and shielding passively through dealing damage thanks to their Cardio for single target and Pneuma for AoE. They also provide their whole team increased damage thanks to Toxicon, which inflicts an AoE debuff, increasing the damage the enemy takes. Now when it comes to their own damage, they have the aforementioned Pneuma and Toxicon, along with a strong but short-range AoE in Phlegma, and their filler spell Dosis 3, which can be enhanced through the ability Eucrasia to make it a powerful dot. And lastly, they have mobility in the form of Icarus. Their limit break is Mesitis, which places a circle that prevents any damage from outside the circle, and if the enemy actually enters the circle, then they'll be inflicted with a potent dot. The pros for Sage are their great party utility, their good damage, and their LB, which is incredibly strong. Cons, they have no real CC, and Phlegma's short range can be rather dangerous. Scholar is a defensive focused healer using abilities like Adloquium and Expedient to provide their party with shields and or mitigation, along with other buffs such as increased damage or movement speed. They also tend to do the reverse, using things like Biolosis or Mummification to not only deal damage, but also inflict the enemy with debuffs like decreased damage or healing. And while Adloquium and Biolosis are both single target abilities, they can be spread through the use of another ability, Deployment Tactics. Also, anytime Expedient is used, they are able to use a buffed version of either of those skills. Their limit break is Summon Seraph, which provides 2 buffs to any party members within the range when used, and these buffs are a free Purify for the next CC and a small heal that will trigger upon falling below 50% or when the buff wears off. After being summoned, Seraph will linger on the field for a time, healing and shielding nearby allies, and if the ability is used again, they will do an AoE heal and shield. The pros to Scholar are the fact they bring great utility and durability to any team, and they punish heal-heavy jobs rather harshly. Cons, they have no CC, no mobility, and no kill potential, which means they're very reliant on their team. White Mage is a damage-focused healer with 2 of the strongest CCs in the game, the first of which is Miracle of Nature, which transforms a single target, preventing any action, and this effect cannot be purified. Speaking of which, they also have access to their own Purify in the form of their Shield Aqua Veil, which actually doubles in strength if used to remove a CC, making it in general more useful than their other support skill Cure 2. That is, unless used after their Gap Closer Seraph Strike, which actually turns it into an instant cast AoE. Speaking of which, Seraph Strike is one of their 2 damaging abilities, and not only does it give Cure 3, but it also provides nearby allies some mitigation. As for their other damage ability, that is Afflatus Misery, and it's just a normal AoE. Their limit break is Afflatus Purgation, and this is their other powerful CC, as it's a hard-hitting line AoE that not only stuns all enemies that are hit by it, but also gives nearby allies increased damage and a regen. The pros to White Mage are their incredible CC, their surprising durability, and their great damage. Cons, they don't really have any. Dark Knight is a tank that excels at zone control, primarily because of their Salted Earth, which is a lingering field effect that pulls enemies into it, along with damaging them if they remain within it. However, it does more than just damage, as it also serves as a CC, a mitigation, and even a heal, which is important, as a big part of Dark Knight is trading their health for damage, primarily through their Shadowbringer, an ability you can keep using as long as you have the health to pay. This cost is further helped with their Quietus, another AoE that heals for the damage done, and their Blackest Night Shield that, when broken, allows a free use of Shadowbringer. Even their Gap Closer helps with healing, as it inflicts a debuff, not only preventing the enemy from healing, but if they die with it, the Dark Knight is then healed. Their limit break is Evertide, an AoE that reduces them to 1 HP and deals more damage depending on how much HP was expended for it. They're also granted a buff that prevents them from dropping below 1 HP and causes all their attacks to heal. The pros to Dark Knight are their Salted Earth, their survivability, and their good AoE damage. Their cons are they require a lot of resource management, and anti-healing can definitely hurt their durability. ability. Gunbreaker is a somewhat versatile but mostly DPS focused tank, using their draw and junction to not only change what abilities they have access to, but also the bonus effects of their other abilities. The ones most affected by this are their cartridge continuum combos, which depending on the junction roll can either grant damage, a personal shield, or AoE healing. Furthermore, the abilities they gain from junctioning to specific rolls follow this pattern, as Nebula is a mitigation, Blasting Zone is another attack, and Aurora is a powerful heal. Outside their main gimmick, they also have access to a simple AoE and Double Down, and a gap closer that boosts their damage, healing, and movement speed. Their limit break is Relentless Rush, which grants them mitigation while also unleashing a flurry of blows, building stacks of a debuff, reducing the damage of those hit while also increasing the damage they take. At the end of the duration or upon reusing the ability, they will be able to use Terminal Trigger, which is an AoE stun. The pros to Gunbreaker are their great damage, their versatility, and their party utility. Cons, their lack of CC means they're relatively easy to kite, and they're likely the least durable of the tanks, especially if they don't sacrifice some of their damage. Paladin is an incredibly durable tank with a large variety of survival tools available to them, such as their Shield Holy Sheltron, or their various healing tools like their Confiteor or their Atonement. And this durability helps facilitate their incredibly powerful party utility Guardian, a gap closer that dashes to an ally, covering them, causing all damage to be taken from the Paladin rather from them. As for their own damage, they primarily focus on single target, using things like their second gap closer Intervene and Shield Bash to catch and stun enemies. Their limit break is Phalanx, which grants nearby allies mitigation while also giving the Paladin hollowed ground, preventing them from taking any damage. While this effect is active, they will also gain access to their Blade of Faith combo, giving them some powerful AoE damage. The pros to Paladin are their incredible durability and their fantastic party utility. Cons, they lack heal potential, meaning they can be a bit reliant on others. Warrior's a tank that excels in AoE thanks to abilities like Primal Rend and AoE stun, or Origami and AoE damage debuff. And better yet, because of Bloodwetting, warriors are able to heal an absurd amount of damage anytime they hit multiple enemies. Now another strength to warrior is their ability to chase and catch players, as Primal Rend isn't their only gap closer, as they also have access to Onslaught, which has the added benefit of increasing the damage that the target takes. And if they still try to escape, you can pull the enemy to you with Blota, slowing them. The limit break is Primal Scream, which removes and prevents the use of guard for all enemies hit. This will also prevent them from using guard, but in exchange they will become immune to all CC, have increased movement speed, and their damage is effectively doubled. The pros to warrior are their fantastic CC, their mobility, and their ability to remove guard. Cons, their durability drops noticeably if the enemies refuse to group or if they have anti-healing, and while their damage is fantastic during their LB, it can be kind of low outside of it. Dragoon is a burst-heavy DPS using a combination of abilities such as Gishgogol, High Jump, Heavenly Thrust, Elusive Jump, and Whirlwind Thrust to do massive damage in a short amount of time. However, this combo does come with a risk, as while Gishgogol does increase the damage you do, it also increases the damage you take. This downside can, however, be countered by another one of their abilities, Horrid Roar, which is an AoE that greatly reduces the damage that enemies deal to the Dragoon. Also, outside their main Dragoon combo is Chaotic Spring, which is simply an attack that heals for the damage it does. Their limit break is Sky High, which removes a couple of soft CCs as they jump into the gear for a short amount of time, where they're able to continue to move and become untargetable. Then at the end of the duration, or by using the ability again, they can come crashing down, doing massive AoE damage, which is doubled at the center, and as an extra bonus, they're given a rather hefty shield. The pros to Dragoon are their great damage, both single target and AoE, their durability with Roar, and their incredibly powerful LB. Cons, if not careful with Roar, they're very easy to kill, and their kill power is greatly reduced outside their combo and LB. Monk is a single target focused DPS who primarily utilizes their feeler to do their damage, slowly ramping up to a massive hit at the end of their combo. They're able to speed up this process by using their gap closer Thunderclap, which grants a buff, increasing their attack speed, along with granting a shield. They're also able to lock down enemies and increase their movement speed with their stun Six-Sided Star, and they can even increase the damage of those big hits through abilities like Rising Phoenix and Enlightenment. Lastly, they also have Riddle of Earth, which compiles damage, exploding at the end of its duration and provides a heal. The limit break is Meteor Drive, which dashes to a target, removing their guard or dealing double damage if they aren't guarding. The pros to Monk are their incredible single target damage, their mobility, and their ability to remove guard. Cons, their AoE is a bit weak and they struggle against multiple opponents. Ninja is an incredibly versatile and elusive DPS with easily the most abilities out of any job because of their 3 Mudra ability, turning all their normal skills into completely new ones. These consist of CC gap closers in Raiju, heals in Misui, AoEs in Gokumiyaku/Doton, and lastly single target in Hoshi Ranryu. However, these abilities do have the restriction that the same one can't be used twice in a row, as As for their normal abilities, they have a weak ranged attack in Fuma Shuriken, a damage buff in Mug, a gap closer in Tsukuchi, which turns them invisible, and lastly Bushin, which grants a shield and causes their attacks to repeat. Their limit break is Saiton Tenchu, which rushes a target, dealing okay damage, but if they are below 50%, it will instantly kill them, allowing the ability to be used again for a short time. The pros to Ninja are their incredibly versatile toolkit, their elusiveness, their durability, and their fantastic limit break. Cons, they can be very difficult to play and learn. Reaper is a rather durable and mobile DPS who, thanks to plentiful harvest, is able to use their limit break constantly, as it gradually fills their limit break and potentially does a massive amount of damage if they build enough sacrifices, which can either be done by killing enemies or by using Soul Slice. Now, when it comes to their durability, they have two abilities of note. First is their Arcane Crest, which is a shield that when broken will heal nearby allies, and Harvest Moon, which is an AoE that heals for the damage done. Now, Harvest Moon is only available after using Death Warrant, which is one of their key damage tools, as it inflicts a debuff on the enemy, compiling the damage the Reaper deals to them, causing them to take half the compiled damage when the debuff ends. They also have access to an AoE slow in Grim Swath and a teleport with Hell's Ingress that actually allows you to return to the original position if used again. Their limit break is Tenebrae Limerum, which fears all nearby enemies, including those guarding, causing it to be removed, and afterwards the Reaper enters Enshrouding, increasing the damage they deal with their next 5 filler attacks and or their CC ability, which becomes a bind. Along with this, they also have access to a hard-hitting AoE in Communio. The pros to Reaper are their constant LBs and their ability to remove guard. Cons, they're very reliant on Death Warrant for single target damage, meaning a well-timed guard can greatly hamper them. Samurai is a mobile DPS who uses their gap closer Hisatsu Soten to not only dash through enemies, but also to enhance their filler combo, granting a different effect for each ability in the combo. Those effects in order are an AoE bind, a normal AoE, and an AoE that heals for the damage done. And if you notice, they're all AoEs, meaning that generally you're going to want to fight in group. And another ability that helps with this is their mitigation, Hitsutsu Chitin, which also provides a damage boost, a reflect, and inflicts a debuff when struck, adding a bonus effect to their LB against that target. When it comes to single target, they have two options, the first of which is Ogi no Makiri, which has a short cast time and is normally an AoE that grants a shield, but when used against a single target, it gets bonus damage, and this ability can be used twice. Their other single target ability is gained by using Nihil Susui, a Purified that also allows you to use Madari Setsugeka that, similar to Namakiri, has a short cast to use. However, to help lock enemies down for these attacks, you also have access to Minouchi, which is a single target stun. The limit break is Zen Tetsuken, which charges an enemy, dealing damage to them and other nearby enemies. However, if they're inflicted with a debuff from Chitin, then the attack will one-shot them. The pros to Samurai are their great AoE, their mobility, and their potentially game-changing LB. Cons, it's rather difficult to get a good LB, and the cast time for those big attacks makes it somewhat easy to kite them. Art is a support-focused DPS, providing various party buffs when using different abilities like their Apex Arrow and Blast Arrow, both of which grant reduced cast time and increased damage to nearby allies when used. They also have the ability to remove CC with a Warden's Peon, which if done successfully would grant the target mitigation and increased healing. Outside their buffs, they also have access to a Silence with Silent Nocturne, a Disengage with a Repelling Shot, which also binds the target, and Imperial Arrow, which is a weak single target attack that can stack up to 3 times, but when used, it consumes all stacks. We also need to make special mention of their filler Powerful Shot that not only does more damage the further the target is from them, but each time you use it, it reduces the cooldown of Imperial Arrow. Also, many of your abilities give repertoire, which makes it slightly stronger and an instant cast. Their limit break is Final Fantasia, which is an AoE buff that reduces cast time, increases damage and movement speed, and gradually fills your allies' limit break. The pros to Bard are their incredible support abilities and their decent damage. Cons, they're somewhat reliant on their team, and they're not that durable. Dancer is an incredibly mobile DPS that provides a plethora of support to a chosen party member thanks to their closed position, and essentially every tool in their kit will not only buff the Dancer, but also their partner. Fan Dance is a weak AoE that gives mitigation, Starfall Dance is a powerful AoE that gives a buff that reduces cast time, Curing Waltz is an AoE that heals both the Dancer and their partner, and finally Saber Dance is a powerful AoE that does extra damage to single targets and gives both the Dancer and their partner increased damage. Now, Saber Dance is only available after using their upgraded filler a couple times, which is only available after using their dash in Avant. Outside their partner buffs, they also have access to Honing Dance, which is a channeled AoE that also grants nearby allies a shield depending on how long the ability channeled for. Their limit break is Contra Dance, which charms all nearby enemies, and this effect can be extended by attacking those who are already inflicted with it. The pros to Dancer are their fantastic buffs, their great AoE damage, and their mobility. Cons, they have no CC outside their LB, making it somewhat difficult to secure kills, which is why they are rather reliant on their team, especially their partner. And while their LB is incredibly powerful, it is effectively useless if your team doesn't act act upon it. Machinist is a single target focused DPS who cycles through various tools, each of which have rather different effects that can be further enhanced with the ability Analysis. Their drill does high damage and goes through guard, Bioblast is an AoE that can gain a slow, Air Anchor is a single target bind that can be upgraded to a stun, and Chainsaw is a line AoE that does more damage if the target is below 50%. Also their tools, they also have access to a turret that shields allies and debuffs enemies, a short range AoE that inflicts a knockback and hits twice if used on a single target, and lastly Wildfire, a debuff that explodes at either 3 stacks or when it expires. Their limit break is Marksman Spite, which is just a massive single target attack. The pros for Machinists are their great single target damage, their versatility, and their ability to pierce guard. Cons, they have little mobility and rather weak AoE that requires them to be closer to the action than they may normally want to be. Black Mage is an AoE-focused caster using either Fire or Blizzard to build stacks of Ice or Fire on the enemy that can then be detonated for different effects using Super Flare. If used with Fire, then the enemies will be inflicted with a potent dot that is longer with more stacks, and if used with Ice, then the enemy will be inflicted with progressively stronger CCs, depending on the number of Ice stacks, going from a slow to a bind and finally Deep Freeze, which is effectively a stun. Now to help build these stacks as fast as possible, you can use their Gap Closer Ethereal Manipulation, which grants Swift Cast, or you can simply cast Paradox, which will set a single enemy to max stacks of whichever stack they currently have on them. Outside their Fire and Ice abilities, they also have access to a powerful short-ranged AoE in Burst, which also grants a potent shield, and another CC in Nightwing, which is an AoE Sleep. The limit break is Soul Resonance, which grants 6 free casts of their highest Fire or Ice spell, along with reducing the recast time of Super Flare. They also gain some mitigation and the use of a powerful AoE in Foul. The pros to Black Mage are their incredible AoE and their strong AoE CC. Cons, they're relatively easy to focus and zone if their team doesn't protect them. Red Mage is a versatile caster with the ability to switch between damage or support focused effects by using their Shift ability. While in Black Shift, their melee combo will inflict a potent dot, they gain access to Frazzle, an AoE debuff increasing the enemy's damage taken and reducing their healing. They have access to Ver Flare, a powerful AoE, and lastly, Resolution will inflict an AoE bind. While in White Shift, the dot from their melee combo becomes a shield, Frazzle becomes Magic Barrier, an AoE mitigation and heal increase. They have access to Ver Holy rather than Flare, which heals nearby allies, and Resolution inflicts an AoE silence rather than an AoE bind. They also have access to 2 mobility skills that are not affected by their shift. The first is Core, which dashes to a target, inflicting a debuff that increases the damage they take while reducing the damage they do. The second is Displacement, an attack that jumps back from the target and increases the damage of the Red Mage's next spell. Their limit break is Southern Cross, which drops an X AoE on the target, healing allies and damaging nearby enemies, and those in the center of the X will be hit by the effect twice. Also, depending on your shift, either the damage or the heal will be stronger. The pros to Red Mage are their versatility, their utility, their CC, and their mobility. Cons, if you guard their melee combo, they lose a good chunk of their single target damage. Summoner is an AoE-focused DPS with a variety of zone control abilities, such as Slipstream, which leaves a lingering field that damages enemies while also increasing your party's movement speed. Now, to facilitate their AoE damage, they have the ability to pull enemies together with Mountain Buster, and the ability to knock them away from each other with their Crimson Cyclone combo. Now, the one bit of non-AoE they have access to that isn't their filler is Fester, which gets stronger as the enemy's health drops. And one last bonus, they have a shield and Radiant Aegis that also serves as a mitigation. Summoner is actually unique in that they have 2 limit breaks, Summon Bahamut and Summon Phoenix. Bahamut is the damage focused of the 2, dealing massive AoE damage when initially summoned, and after which he will linger and attack the lowest health enemy. And by using the ability again, you can have him cast Akmorn, which is another strong AoE ability. Also, while active, your filler spell becomes slightly more powerful. Phoenix is the more supportive of the 2, providing a potent heal for allies when summoned, and after which, like Bahamut, he will linger except attacking the closest target and inflicting a debuff which reduces the damage they deal massively. Using the ability again will cause him to cast Revelation, an AoE that is actually more powerful than Akmorn, but it is in the form of a dot. Again, your filler spell will change, except the power is the same, but it becomes instant cast. The pros to Summoner are their powerful AoEs, their versatility, their utility, and of course their zone control. Cons, they do tend to need at least some follow-up to their big AoE damage, and their single target is a bit weak. And that marks the end of our job summaries. Hopefully this video served as a good starting point for your PvP journey. Ideally, it at least helped you find a job you want to try and learn. Now, if you made it this far into the video, thanks for watching, and if you found it helpful, please consider liking and subscribing. Also, consider checking out one of my other videos like this one I did on the importance of channeling ether, or maybe one of my other guides like this PvP one. Either way, again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.